Bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup d'être ce soir avec nous sur ce Zoom, sur ce dispositif en direct très spécifique, très spécial avec Ken Loach, qu'on remercie énormément pour son temps, bien évidemment, et pour l'intérêt. Donc, sur cette discussion qui va avoir lieu en deux temps, qui est organisée par le Festival du film politique, qui hélas n'a pas eu lieu, enfin la troisième édition en tout cas n'a pas eu lieu en raison du Covid. Dans un premier temps, la discussion va être animée par la journaliste Yaël Hirsh, fondatrice de Toute la culture. Dans vraiment une première partie qui va porter sur le cinéma Ken Loach, sur votre regard, Ken Loach, sur le cinéma politique. Et puis dans un deuxième temps, la discussion sera ouverte aux participants. Ce qu'on vous propose pour celles et ceux qui parlent anglais et qui sont connectés sur le Zoom, c'est de posez vos questions à l'écrit et on va vous contacter en régie pour vous proposer de passer de l'autre côté et pouvoir poser la question et d'échanger réellement, de pouvoir discuter réellement dans cette partie-là en anglais si possible, donc tout à l'heure. Donc n'hésitez pas à poser vos questions à l'écrit et on fera en sorte de prendre toutes les questions possibles. On a 1 heure et demie devant nous.
On voulait vous remercier infiniment d'être présent, d'avoir suivi cet événement, évidemment dans le cadre de la crise sanitaire que nous connaissons, et remercier infiniment Monsieur Ken Loach pour cet échange que nous avons construit depuis des mois, puisque c'est vrai qu'on essayait depuis plusieurs mois de pouvoir organiser cet échange, et ce sera d'une immense richesse pour nous tous de pouvoir y participer et de pouvoir vous écouter, cher Monsieur Loach, ce soir.
So thank you, Mr. Loach. And pour le public français, vous pouvez soit laisser en anglais, soit en français. Et on te donne la parole, Yaël. Merci aussi d'être avec nous.
Merci beaucoup à vous deux. I'll switch into English. So if you want the French translation, choose the French channel. So I'm very, very honored, Mr. Loach, and very happy to be asking you questions for this masterclass. Thank you very much to the Festival International du Film Politique de Carcassonne, with an amazing festival. I was there last year, loved it, and we're waiting for next year, the next edition, really, with lots of excitement. So how do I present you in a few words, Mr. Loach? I don't know. Like it's so difficult and so great at the same time. So basically, I got some help from The Guardian, which in 2019, the occasion of your last movie out on our screens, Sorry We Missed You, made a ranked list according to their favorite, which is not everyone's favorite, movies, and they counted 37. But then I asked around, and I think around me, everyone has a favorite movie, and not only a favorite movie of yours that's different, but also a scene from a movie that really like mark them and they carry with them along the way. And so thank you for all that, and thank you so much. So basically for us French, I think the fact that you got 7 prizes in Cannes, you were there since, and many of my colleagues and I saw your movies in Cannes. The first one being Kess in 1971, and at the Semaine de la Critique, if I'm correct, and that you got 2 Golden Palms with the Wing That Shake the Barley in 2006, and I, Daniel Blake, in 2016, was very important, of course, and makes you a member of a very select club of 5 cinematographers, 5 directors who got 2 Palme d'Or. Your cinema is very political, and this masterclass will be about politics and cinema and what is political cinema. It's also so humane that, it just also works through the emotion. And thank you so much. And so I have a first question that's obvious after 37 movies, and which is, how do you get the energy? What fuels that energy? Is it something, changing the world is the goal?
Well, not quite such a grand ambition as that. I'm afraid changing the world is a bit beyond the film. But can I say it's a real pleasure to join you. And I'm very sorry that we're not in the same room, which would be much nicer, particularly a room in Carcassonne, which I visited once and liked very much. Maybe one day we can all be in a real meeting. Political films, energy. Well, what gives you the energy, and I think this Paul Laverty, the writer I've worked with now for nearly 30 years, and Rebecca O'Brien, the producer, and all the people who work with us, what gives you the energy is the people who fight back. You know, the people who are actively in the front line of the political struggle. We went to Nicaragua after the Sandinista revolution and the attacks of the Americans, and meeting the people who had made that revolution work and seeing their courage in the face of the American destruction gave you energy. People in a strike who stand out even when they have no money, even when they go hungry, they inspire you. You know, the people who support the hungry and the homeless and the poor, they inspire you. So anyone, it's resistance that inspires you and gives you energy.
And then the other question, but I don't know if you answered it, is do you still get surprised? And what's the good balance between surprise and what you kind of masterize to make sure the movie comes to an end? Or
well, do you mean a political surprise or a cinematic or a surprise?
Cinematic, human, you know.
Because the attacks from the political right wing have no surprises. We know exactly what they will do, and they do it. And we know the dirty tricks, and we know the lies they tell, and the personal attacks. So they have no surprise. But the surprise is all when you are lucky enough to work on a film. The surprise is always the generosity and the talent of the people you meet, and the insights that they bring. Maybe not consciously, but you see the insights they bring, and how powerful they can be, because in the what we call the mainstream media, that is the press or the television, you don't see these people. But when you really know a community, when you get to know a community, a working class community, then it is full of surprises and full of brilliant people that the world doesn't know about. So that's where the surprises are.
Thanks. And to start with maybe the beginning, you started more with theater and as an actor. Why did you move to movies? And before making movies yourself, did you have movies in mind that could have a political impact, that, you know, paved the way for you a little bit of the kind of cinema you wanted to make?
Not really. No, I wasn't very political when I was in the theatre. I mean, I was like most people, young people. I was vaguely on the left. I was vaguely against the establishment, you know, against the elite. But no, what I mean, I was briefly an actor, but I think I was probably the worst actor in England at the time. I don't think there would have been a worse actor. And then I directed in the theatre a little bit. And then we had a young family. I had to find work. So I got a job in television, and they took me on as a director. I don't know why. I mean, I had no qualification. It was just luck, really. And then I did police series, and I worked then with a group of people my age, late 20s, and the task we were given was to make contemporary fiction in peak time on a Wednesday evening after the news, and making contemporary fiction with writers who were political, who understood how society worked. That really was my political education. And the 60s was a very political time. And I started work on doing contemporary fiction, new writing, about 1964. So for the next 4 or 5 years, really the political struggles that, well, you know all about that in Paris in 68. Paris in 68 was the culmination. It was after the process of political engagement. And that's when I I found politics was inevitable, really. If you wanted to tell the story of how people lived and why they lived the way they did and what choices they had and how society is structured, then politics is inevitable. There's no escape, I'm afraid. And that was when I really was drawn into politics, political books, political understanding, political struggle, political friendships, political organizations, and so on.
And actually, some of your movies made directly a difference through the debates they fostered. So, for example, Cathy Come Home was followed by 12 million people on the BBC. And there was a housing program at the time, but I think it really made a difference. Or like more recently, Daniel Blake was a huge success everywhere in Europe, but also in England, and came the year that Brexit was voted, and also the year all the social helps gathered in the universal program in England. And the critique had a direct political impact in some kind of ways. Is that something that really is kind of like a reward or something that's, how do you feel about your movies having a direct impact when they do?
Well, it's been a very different direct impact. Back Cathy Come Home was, as you said, was a film about homelessness. It was a film about a family that is split, that is separated because they have nowhere to live. And at the time, the British government refused to provide shelter for the whole family. The mother and the children would be sheltered, but the father was not allowed to join them. And many families never recovered. Many families never came back together. And we showed this in the film, and as a consequence, that small rule was changed. But there's more homeless now than there was when we made the film. So it didn't change the fundamentals. And I think that was a big lesson for us, because there's nothing in the film that challenges the structure of why people are homeless, the underlying questions. It looked at the surface, but it didn't go deeper to see the underlying questions. And that was the lesson for us. And we thought, from now on, we must try to examine the structure of society that produces homelessness, produces poverty, and so on. And sorry, I've got hiccups. And I've been hiccuping for an hour now. And then Daniel Blake was a very different kind of film. And I hope it's, as well as showing the brutality of the state in imposing hunger on the most vulnerable people. I mean, they use hunger as a weapon. They use hunger as a weapon to discipline working class people, so that however bad the job they are offered, poor wages, no job security, no health pay, no holiday pay, however bad it is, people will take it because the alternative is hunger. And so to try to show that was a rather more precise examination of society than the previous one. I hope.
Thanks. And maybe there is another way your movies work. It's just changing our collective mind, kind of. It's like showing us faces and destinies of, well, the life of the people, as you say, you know, everyday tough and less tough moments sometimes. And so we change our vision, or we see things we don't want to see. Is that what cinema should do anyways? Is that what your cinema does? Is it a conscious process? Is it a unconscious process?
Well, I think to be persuasive and to be just to tell the truth really about people, and people are complex, aren't they? And they're contradictory, and they're people. They're three dimensions. They sometimes they do silly things. Sometimes they're funny. Sometimes they can be cruel. Sometimes they can be tender. You know, so trying to understand who we are and present our lives in all their richness and diversity. I mean that's what films can do. And politics and your political analysis of society doesn't dictate the film. It's not a one-to-one relationship. There's the political point of view, there's a film to illustrate it. It's much more subtle. It should inform what you do, but not limit it, not prescribe it. So the stories and the characters and the people you show should be round, should be three-dimensional. You know, I mean, it's because it's drama. We're creating drama, and the great characters in drama have many faces, and they have many sides to them. They have many dimensions, and exploring that complexity and the contradictions and the humanity is what films are about.
And so then, is there kind of a hidden agenda of kind of a human comedy a la Balzac, where you want to show many different layers, and sometimes outside of England, sometimes in England? Or do you move from, and we don't know about the agenda, or do you move with your team or from subject to subject, and it just adds a layer, that dialogue with the audience?
How do you mean exactly?
Like Balzac has this idea of giving a whole picture of society. So I was thinking, do you have this idea, a hidden idea somewhere that you will give along also the years, but this full picture of the people, of the working class, in England and somewhere else? Or are you moving, is it just one subject and then another subject that really takes all the space for you when you create?
Well, it's never been such a grand design. It's not a grand design that you gradually show the full landscape of working class life. But I think there has been with Paul particularly, and Jim Allen, the writer before him, and Barry Hines, who are also wonderful writers. You are drawn just to explore those lives, our lives, and to show the exploitation, to show the choices people face, the hardships they face, but also the joy, the celebration as well. There's a lot to celebrate in working class life. There's a lot of comedy. There's a lot of wit and warmth and tenderness. So the politics is the context, isn't it? It's the frame in which people are in. But within that, people are extraordinary. And I suppose that obviously you don't want to visit the same subjects twice, you know, so inevitably you do gradually fill in a broader canvas, I guess.
Yet, I don't know, is when, you know, seeing a few of your music, for example, Riff Raff, and comparing it to Sorry We Missed You, and also watching your movie about the spirit of 1945, which is about what the Labour Party became, we have the impression that things are getting worse, and well, there is more and more violence imposed upon the working class, and especially from an ultra-liberal system.
Yes.
Is that, you know, is that exactly what you are showing? Is that because it is what it is in their life? What do you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I was a child in the war, and I was 9 when the war ended, and I have a distant memory of that time, you know, when there was a determination to reconstruct society, to build a better world, not to go back to the hardship of the 1920s and 1930s, the mass unemployment, the poverty, the grinding poverty. There was determination not to go back. And so the settlement after 1945 was based on a sense that we looked after each other. People cared for each other, and the war had been fought with solidarity between neighbours. Most families had sons or daughters who were fighting in the army. There was a sense of, even though it was only for the period of the war, there was a sense of a collective. And that was the basis on which society was reconstructed in 1945. Common ownership in some industries, public services, the health service particularly, public transport. We owned a lot, collectively, we owned a lot. And because it was still based on a market economy with private corporations, the major players, it began to collapse. And Thatcher, the critical event for us was the election of Margaret Thatcher in 1979. I mean, this is why it is so different now. Margaret Thatcher waged war on the working class in order to restore profit to big business, to business. And it meant, instead of the common good, you had individual satisfaction, individual greed, individual profit. And that changing consciousness has meant the society now, working that through the next 40 years, has meant that the end result of that is very brutal, very brutal. And complicit in that, sharing that aim, has been Margaret Thatcher, Tory prime ministers, and particularly Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, speaking for Labour, speaking for the left party, but nevertheless following the Thatcher politics. And that has been the decisive political fact, really, of our development in the last 40 years. The party that is supposed to be at the left has endorsed the politics of the right. And that's been so destructive. And it's reduced now. We have many working class people have no job security. They work longer hours, they have low pay, they live hand to mouth. Homelessness is a big issue. Hunger is a big issue. Poverty is now amongst the lower, the most oppressed people in the working class. it's not true of the whole working class, but of the people at the bottom who are really suffering. The poverty is extreme. It's not it's the journalists, the press will do a little bit now and then and talk about the victims, but they never talk about our strength. They never talk about our collective strength. That's in a way that's why the films have got harsher, and I guess more angry. And Riff Raff was what was 30 years ago. The effects haven't worked through in quite the same way. Now, the effects of Thatcher and Blair are devastating.
Yes, yeah, we feel that in your movies. In the last one, sorry we missed you. Is like the scenes are terrible, and the difficulty to try and unite and have a common voice, and the scene when the hero takes the job of someone else is just really heartbreaking. Yet, I think from the beginning there is something which is kind of something mysterious and paradoxical in your cinema, and which makes it very strong. At the same time, it's always a cinema that relies on very strong individualistic or strong characters. It's the story usually of one person or one family or one group of friends, but you always have a hero or heroine crossing, and so really your camera focuses on one single person and not really on how solidarity or how making a common cause works. And I think, already in Katie Come Home, or it's difficult for them already then to kind of speak with the same voice or organize in most of your movies. It's not easy because they are so diverse, they are individuals. They don't think of themselves, as members of a class themselves, your characters.
Well, we've done overall, I've done a lot of films about strikes, and we did one in Los Angeles, actually, about the office cleaners, where they won. And they were immigrants, and they were vulnerable. And often women who were illegal immigrants, yet they got organized and they won. They won a decent wage. And the ones where there has been a collective have been, we did one in the Spanish Civil War, which was obviously about the collective, about an armed working class. Same in Nicaragua, same to an extent in Ireland. In the early days, I did a lot of films about strikes, and how to organize and the difficulties of organizing. But the reality, since Margaret Thatcher attacked the trade unions, it's been more difficult for them. And the reality for many workers is that they struggle. But the films are used a lot by trade unions to recruit, where the film said, look, here's a situation we all recognize, join the union, and they've been used a lot for that, which is good, which we're all very pleased about.
I was thinking, for example, of Navigators, which is also, it's already in the 90s, but it's already this difficulty, even if the art team, they've been trained in, having a collective kind of spirit, but it's very difficult to face ultra-liberalism and to, stay united. Or
Yes. Well, I think that was the problem. I mean, the unions have had right-wing leaderships, most of them. There's some great exceptions. I mean, the miners, there are 3 or 4 brilliant union leaders now, and there have been some very fine union leaders in the past, but not many. The majority of the unions are led by the right wing, and that's been the problem. I mean, when Thatcher was making her grand attack, the unions the leadership mainly colluded, and that enabled her to succeed. If the unions had really fought, it could have been very different. But the Labour leadership and the trade union leadership, most of them colluded, And we did a series about it on television. We did a documentary series that showed this. And people spoke who'd never been heard before, never been interviewed before, and told their stories. And they banned the films. They wouldn't let them be shown. And they were delayed, and then they were refused a screening. And this was a major television channel. So it's one lesson from that is when the ruling class feels threatened, they make certain your voices aren't heard.
The other thing which is interesting, I think, well, so many things are interesting, is that we rarely see this ruling class. Actually, what is shown and is horrific is what I guess the German sociologist Max Weber used to call the iron cage of bureaucracy. And often the people who are directly taking the children away, denying housing, organizing like very poor work in very poor conditions, are themselves, a bit safer maybe, but not much more in your movies. And they could kind of belong also to the working class. And how does that work? And why this focus to stay kind of among middle or lower middle and working class people?
Well, it's partly because filmmaking again isn't, you don't prescribe it according to the political I don't know, it's partly is where you feel comfortable working. I have no sympathy for the ruling class, so I don't like them very much. I'd find it very difficult to portray them with properly, because everyone is a three-dimensional person, and I don't find them good company. And I think you can suggest everything, or I hope you can suggest the structure without seeing the people. You don't have to know Jeff Bezos to know what his function is and what the structure of society is that enables him to be so obscenely rich. We did show them once, long time ago. We did a film called The Gamekeeper, which is about, gamekeeper, what that means. It's a man who works for a big aristocratic estate usually, and the aristocrats like shooting birds. They like shooting birds, and the gamekeeper is the man who prepares the birds ready to be thrust into the air for the aristocrats to shoot. And we did a film about that, and about a gamekeeper who had been a steel worker. So he had a sense of working class solidarity, but he loved the open air. He loved the landscape. He loved wildlife. So he became a gamekeeper. And the scene at the end was the aristocrats arriving to do the shooting. And I didn't like them, actually. They were just not very nice people. I hope they're not listening to this. But it was not easy to work with them, Whereas with working class people, you share a joke, you understand each other. There's a kind of enjoyment of the collective endeavor of making a film, and that it means it's a better film for that. So I guess that's why we haven't included them in the film. In the films, I just don't want to work with them.
I had a question also about violence in your movies. There is obviously this violence of the system that crushes characters in many of your movies, but there is sometimes a counter violence. It's shouting over the phone. It's just getting angry. It can also be burning down a whole building, like in Riff Raff. What do you think? can counter violence from the working class be useful, and when and how does it work? And especially at the image, you know, with cinema, like, because
I mean,
you have a royal way to show it.
Yeah, I mean, I hate violence in the cinema, really. I hate fake violence, and I hate that glorification of it, you know, with the close-ups and the fists and the fake blood and that pretense. I just hate it, because we know it's pretense, but there's a kind of enjoyment of it. Well, people, you know, the film pretends to disapprove, but it's filmed in such a way that people are meant to get pleasure from it. You know, boxing films where it's just, they enlarge the sound of the smack of the smack of the fist, you know, and I hate all that. But I think when it's absolutely right, then, and it is fundamental to the story, then yes, it has to be there. But I mean, there's many kinds of violence, aren't there? There's not just well, there's physical violence. We did a film about called Ladybird, Ladybird, about a woman whose children are taken away because they think she's a bad mother when she isn't, in fact. But she's a victim of domestic violence. Well, you have to see a little bit of that, you know, in order to understand what domestic violence means. But you can't make it melodramatic. You know, you can't enjoy it, or film it in such a way that you enjoy it.
In your movies, I mean, there are, well, actually 3 things, but especially 2 with all these strong characters that seem to resist kind of the violence. Sometimes it gets eroded by it later. It's first love, and I really want you to speak about love and the couple and how it's a nest of protection for some of your characters in some of your movies. And also the family, like it's not a bourgeois concept. Wanting the best for your kids, failing when you don't manage to do that, and it's not sometimes not your fault. Protecting your children, keeping your children is something very important for many of the characters of your cinema.
Yes, well, I think that's the experience of most people, isn't it? That you meet. I mean, most people have families. I mean, the family is where we learn about love and affection, and as children, or the lack of affection. It's where you learn about looking after each other. It's where you look for support. And in most people you meet, as parents, they understand that, and they're concerned about that, and they do their best, and they do what they can, and sometimes work prevents it, or sometimes work makes it difficult. But I think it's who we are, isn't it? And we learn about the politics of relationships as well in families. You know, I mean, there's family politics as well as class politics, but they interconnect. You know, and the choices parents have depends on their social status, doesn't it? Depends on their social class, on their resources, on their security. So the interconnection between the politics of society and the possibilities within families is very intricate and essential. I mean, yeah, there's lots we could talk about, but does that cover some of the ground you were thinking of?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, you know, it's from the beginning. It's like the couple in the last movie also. This family trying to be around this father who has a job that's, you know, taking him all his energy, and trying to pay attention to the kids, and the mother who is a nurse, you know, like protecting a family like a mother wolf or something. It's
yeah. I mean, they are
very strong, and
yes.
you know, love as strong as politics or something like that, or as strong as,
yes.
As, you know.
I mean, the irony is that the mother is a care worker. She takes care of old people. She shows great skill. She's got great humanity. She is paid almost very little money. Her hours are very long, so she cannot give that care to her children in practical terms that she needs to. Yet it's her greatest quality. And it's an irony because she can't do for her kid. I mean, she's clearly a very good mother. In the film, she's clearly very good. She's very caring. She's giving them instructions over the phone. She's telling them where their food is. She's telling them where don't play on the computer all evening because you've got to do your homework by phone. You know, all that. And yet, when the little girl comes in, she just eats cornflakes. You know, and that's an irony brought about by work, the demands of her work. And the fact that she can't give up her job because they need the money, because they're in debt. You know, so it's about choices, isn't it? It's always about choices.
And my next question will be about history or maybe memory. And again, in Sorry We Missed You, you have this character of the old lady she takes care of, who is like kind of the memory of the Labour Party and the Can't Walk. You made, you know, you got 2 Palme d'Or, one for a movie in costumes and one for a movie with a very, very like story from every day, from, you know, almost next door that you opened the door for us. But I think, you know, that history plays a role in both your movies. The movies about big historical moments and movies about every day. What role does it play in your movie, and what's its political power or political worth of that? It's telling the truth, telling history.
Yes, it's fundamental. We can't change anything if at least the leadership doesn't know our history and explain it. Because in order to understand how we change the world, we have to know how we have arrived here. You know, we have to understand the political forces against our strengths and our weaknesses. What's the essence of the conflict we're in? We have to, and that's in our history. You know, for us, it's in the 17th century. You know, when in our revolution, the aristocracy was defeated, but the new bourgeoisie took its place very clearly. And in that revolution, there was a left that said, look, the land is ours now. And the people who led the revolution said, no, it isn't. This land belongs to the men of property. You have no vote. You have no power. And that's the key thing from our history. Once we know that, then the development of the working class and why, when we got the vote, it didn't change anything because the men of property and the women of property still had the power. So understanding our history is fundamental to understanding how we can change politics. And of course, the development of the trade union movement, the development of the parties of the left, the party of the left, and why that is now has always been the party of capital, even though its name is Labour, its politics is based on the interests of capital. And this is when a story that I think even people in Europe did not understand very clearly. 4 or 5 years ago, the Labour Party elected a man who actually stood for the interests of the working class, Jeremy Corbyn, and they lied about him, and they said he was racist. They said he was a fool. They said he was supported terrorism. Lies, absolute lies. But nevertheless, they destroyed him. And now the party of Labour is once more the party of capital. You know, I mean, we have these big developments that you can see when you look at the history. It's absolutely clear. If you simply know today's events, you don't see that. You know, you can't evaluate it. So history is and the big historical events, the Spanish War, for example, absolutely critical. You know, the moment when the people fought fascism for the first time. And what did Britain do? Let the fascists win. And what did France do and the United States do? Let the fascists win. And then pretend, we've always been anti-fascist. No, they haven't. You know the story of Spain, you know that's a lie. You know, the story of Nicaragua, which is about the Americans sponsoring terrorism to destroy a socialist government that put the interests of its people first. And of course, Chile and Cuba and other countries as well. But if you know that story, you can understand American foreign policy. Just that story tells you everything you need to know about America's commitment to democracy, which is nil. You know, it made us smile when a few hundred people invaded their government offices a few days ago. They bombed democratic governments, the states. You know, so if we know our history, we see everything very clearly. If we don't see it, you can be persuaded by the false propaganda. But history is, without history, we can't move.
Thanks. I tried to have so many questions about how you make movie forms, and so I tried to put them all in one question, because otherwise, obviously, we'll be there tomorrow morning and maybe you have important things to do. But one big question I have, maybe very French, you know, inspired by Godard and this idea that if you want to make the revolution, you need to revolutionize the form and the shape and the way you make movies.
Yeah.
My question would be, you know, in your quest for reality, for authenticity in your movies, whether it's in the documentaries or in the fiction, I think each time there is kind of a real, it's your own, you masterize it, but there is a very classical, straightforward, well-organized classical way of doing movie. Why so? And is it the best way to just spread the message or news that is political?
Well, this is a very interesting discussion, and we've had it at different times over the years, as you can imagine. As you say, to be revolutionary, you must destroy the form. But how do people are drawn into stories. People have always been drawn into stories. The novelist Charles Dickens understood that. And if you want to make people angry, tell them a story about someone they can identify with. Maybe somebody like themselves, maybe somebody close to them, someone they know. And they will be angry on their behalf, you know. And then, or angry with them and say, yes, that's my story too. It's not right, is it? And people are drawn in by shared humor, recognition, understanding, seeing their situation in the characters on the screen, and feeling solidarity with them. And I think, you know, when you talked about we don't show the ruling class in the films, I guess part of what we try and do is make films where the audience will have solidarity with the characters, you know, and so it's we all know, or the implication of who are the exploiters is pretty clear, but it's that sense of solidarity that can move people and can stir them to action. And as I said, the films are often used for campaigns, by activists, and the last two we've had a very simple way in which that can happen at a very cheap rate, and it's been used. So Daniel Blake, I think there were nearly 700 community screenings in rooms over bars, in football clubs, in social clubs, in trade union halls, church halls, you know, wherever. And so they've been used of activities as by activists to build a campaign, to build an organization, to build a trade union. So I guess that's my answer. But an interesting story, if there's time, the company I was working with back in the 70s, a little group of us, doing feature films or trying to, did a film with Godard, and he came to a car factory in Britain, in Oxford. I wasn't involved personally, but there were 2 or 3, my closest friends were, and they enabled it to happen. And we had some very good contacts in this car factory with shop stewards, very political. We were close to a Trotskyist group in the 60s, and they were, again, either members of or close to this group. Their analysis of class in a factory was absolutely spot on. I mean, it was absolutely clear. They spoke very clearly. They spoke with first-hand experience. And we thought, this is a gift, it's a real gift to the great French director, Jean-Luc Godard. These are our best friends. We trust them. And because this is what he does for you, to find some workers, factory workers. So he came and did the film. And when they saw it, they were very dismayed. Because what he'd done, there was a group of people talking, and he would arbitrarily move the camera from one person to another during the conversation, not the people who were speaking, maybe pass across them, maybe hold on them till the middle of a sentence and then move it somewhere else. And we could only rationalize it, we could only understand it in the sense that he was trying to destroy the form of the classic documentary. But nobody saw it. And the people who were in it said, why have you betrayed? No, they didn't say you betrayed us, but they were not happy because they saw it as a way of communicating to French workers what they were experiencing and striking up solidarity and organization, making contacts, finding ways they could support each other. It didn't work like that. And that was about it was a kind of disrespect. In destroying the form, you're destroying their capacity to speak. So I guess I have a different view.
Thanks. I have a last question, and I think we'll have we need the question of the audience there.
Okay.
I think we have more than 65 questions so far.
Okay.
We have 64. My last question is, well, obviously, you're a British director talking a lot about the story of the working class in England, but you have producer distributors also in other countries. Sometimes your movies have had better receptions in other European countries than England. You've been shooting all over, in different countries. You talked about Nicaragua or Los Angeles or East Germany or Germany. Do you feel as, a British director, an international director, or do you feel European identity is important to you? Does it ring a bell? And does the Brexit concretely change things for you or people working with you, around you?
Well, I've always, since I began making films and had an idea about cinema, it's the European cinema that I've felt close to or been excited by and wanted to be part of. Obviously, Italian cinema, the French cinema, despite what I said about Godard, the exhilaration of the new wave films, were just absolutely exciting and enjoyed enormously. I particularly like the Czech films and the East European films. I like the Polish films. I'd say particularly the Czech films of the 60s, the Miloš Forman and Yuri Menzel and other directors like that. They were very humane and very funny and warmth, had a warmth about them that I really liked. So that's the tradition I've tried to work in. But I think, culturally, inevitably, the films that have always worked best are the ones that are absolutely true to the writers, the actors, our our culture is precise about that, precise about language, so that it does seem true. You know, it's not, you know, you get an actor from one country and an actor from another country and pretend they're from somewhere else, and that's kind of, we used to call them Euro puddings, really. That's way, not films, where you have a bit of from different cultures and pretend it's a European film. I think the opposite is true. The more precise you are in the detail, the more true it is, and therefore people recognize the truth, you know, the authenticity, and then it communicates. So there's a paradox there. So I guess cinematically, I feel very European, but culturally, I am, you know, like inevitably a product of England, and our culture and our writers, you know, Chaucer, Shakespeare, Dickens, the poets, Wordsworth, Shelley, you know, the great poets, really. That's what you draw from, thinking of fiction and creating fiction.
Thank you so much, Mr. Loach. Thank you. So yeah, we're opening the questions to the audience, and Enzo Etienne will.
Oh, good. I hope you understood.
Yes,
that.
we have a lot of questions. It will be difficult to take everyone and give the mic to everyone. We propose to give you the mic, and we can start with Cécile Lefebvre. Let's see. Yes.
Very good.
And normally, she can
Hello,
speak.
could you understand me now? Yeah?
I can. I can't see your picture though.
Good evening, Mr. Loach. I'm very impressed to speak to you.
Okay.
So please, sorry for my English, not very good.
No, fantastic. C'est mieux que mon français.
I want to know, what do you think about the period we are living now? That is to say, a health crisis leading to a social crisis, for instance, unemployment, misery, depression, and so on. And what do you think about everyone masked in the streets? That is a very strange life we are living. And do you think you are going to make a movie about this period and these problems, please? And thank you for your answer.
Well, there's a lot of questions in there. I think what we've learned, again, the COVID and the pandemic, it again clarifies the society we live in that the rich have mainly escaped, and the disease is worse amongst the poor. And the poorer you are, the more you have to go out to work, even if it's dangerous. The poorer you are, you live in overcrowded housing, and then the virus spreads. The poorer you are, you depend on government support, and that is very small. It clarified our public services in our country, where the health service was already failing. A lot of it was becoming outsourced to private companies. And we had lost, in the previous 10 years, we'd lost about 30% of our beds in hospitals. So it was already suffering because of the neoliberal cuts. And the same is true of care services and so on. So it clarified that. The sad thing is that just when we could take advantage of that politically, we've lost, as I said earlier, we have lost the leadership of the party of the left. So it is now, again, a party of the right. So that politically, we are not in such a good position. We still have a large membership of the party which is left, because it is left because of the previous leader, and people joined because of him. but we're not as well off as we were. And I guess, I mean, I know a little of the situation in France, and I know you struggle to find a unity of the left. I mean, long story that we're all familiar with, how the left always fragments into different sections, which is not good, fatal. So politically, it's, I think the task is to use the anger that people feel about the way the pandemic has been dealt with, to say this is a consequence of a badly organized society, and we can make it better. The masks, I don't mind. I wear a mask because I don't want to catch it, and so I'm afraid I wear a mask, and most people do here. But I don't think that's a problem, really. Nobody thinks you're going to rob a bank, you know, now if you wear a mask. It's okay. Make a film about it? I don't think so. I think it's in a way that maybe we need good documentaries, but I think that's chasing the headlines, and it's something we haven't really done. You try to find a story that has a long route, you know, and so I'd probably not make a film about it, but films should be made for sure. Okay, nice to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Loach.
Okay, thank you. Sorry I couldn't see you.
Thank you.
Okay.
But I see you.
Maybe for the next person, we can try to use the webcam too. And it's a question of Manon Gilbert. And
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. I'm very happy to ask my two questions. The first one is, how do you do to keep political direction in your movies and not fall into the melodramatic, into melodrama? And the second one is, what is for you a hero?
Well, I think I think the first one, well, you're very kind to say it, if that's true. I hope what you say is true. I think there's a great virtue in working as part of a team of 2 or 3 people. I've worked with the same editor for now 40 years. We've grown old together. I've worked with the same writer, Paul Laverty, for nearly 30 years now. And we are tough critics, you know. If Paul feels there's something sentimental in what we're doing, he will say. If Jonathan Morris, the editor, feels something is sentimental or is too histrionic or is too melodramatic, he will say. And I hate that melodramatic kind of acting and exaggerated ending and music that turns everything into cheap emotion, you know. So I think but between us, it's good to work with people who will say, look, you're getting this wrong, you know, and we say that every film, and always try to err on the side of something that's modest rather than something which claims too much. I mean, you don't always succeed, obviously, but that's the aim. Heroes, well, you remember the line from Brecht, which was unhappy the land that needs heroes, unhappy the land that has no heroes, to which the response is, unhappy the land that needs heroes. You know, we shouldn't need heroes, we should need a strong collective. And I suppose the people that you most respect are those who who work with others for a common aim, and to subordinate their own egos and their own vanity to what is a collective. Really, they're the people I admire. We don't see much of it in films, I'm afraid. Where I'm afraid the order of the day is vanity, not modesty. So it's a funny trade for that. Does that make sense, Manon?
Oui, merci. Yes, thanks a lot.
Okay, merci à vous.
Maybe thank you. Maybe we can yes, give the mic to Amélie Nidam, and if you have a webcam, maybe you can.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the webcam, but I don't know why on my phone I can't turn on the video, so it will only be my voice, but not so bad, I think.
Well, it's very disappointing because I look
I'm
forward to.
sorry, and I'm
I haven't met anyone
big
yet. Well,
fan of you. You can't imagine. Such a pleasure to talk to you, dear Mr. Ken Loach. I had a question about land and about freedom.
Yes.
It's just my favorite movie of yours, but it's not really a question about the movie. But today, to talk about land when the land are closed because of the COVID, and to talk about freedom with a French journalist who is working about culture in a country where culture is forbidden now. What is your point of view about land and freedom now in those days? And most of all, about the way that culture is not well treated these days. Thank you.
Well, I didn't get the question about land and freedom, was it? Or
yes, I wanted to know what is your point of view about the relationship between land and freedom now during this time about COVID, because in France, and it's the same in England, I think we are not allowed to go to theater, to go to cinema, to see movies and those things. And it's the name of these movies, it's that land, freedom in those days, it's a particular echo for me.
right. Well, I mean, I think it's clearly difficult because I mean, I think the mistake our government has made is that they have, and I don't know if it's the same for you. It's the same. What has happened here is that they didn't act quickly. If they'd acted quickly and kept and had a lockdown much sooner, far fewer people would have died, and maybe we could have done much more quickly. They were very slow, and they've been slow again. Most of the people I know, and I agree with them, want to stop this disease spreading as quickly as we can. So I'm very happy to observe that and to stay at home, though I hate it, and to wear a mask and to put sticky stuff on your hands so that you don't put stuff in shops. And I think that's fine because otherwise people will die.
Okay.
And so the connection with land and freedom, I'm still struggling to find. I mean, that's obviously that was a kind of betrayal by a massive struggle by the working class of Spain, and it's, to me, it's a slightly different question, but maybe I'm missing it. I'm missing it, so forgive me if I am.
No, it's perfect. Thank you.
I mean, I think there's one thing to say about that. I mean, here we've got it's usually the far right, the libertarian right, who's like Trump supporters, who say, we won't wear a mask, we don't care, we're just going to we're going to go about our business in the normal way. And you see them in the street, but there's not so many here. It's usually the far right, and they think that protecting people from being ill is somehow an attack on their liberty. And that's not a view I share.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know we have some question of Nicolas Cole, and maybe Nicolas have a webcam.
Voilà.
Yes.
Yes. Vous pouvez me voir, parfait. Je peux parler en français ou en anglais ou comment?
Oui.
Oui.
En français, c'est bon. Il y a quelqu'un qui traduit.
Ah, très bien. Déjà, maintenant, je vous vois. Parfait. Bonsoir, Monsieur Loach. Alors, j'avais 2 questions à vous poser. En fait, je travaille pour un média dédié aux professionnels du cinéma en France qui s'appelle Écran Total. Donc, il s'adresse aux producteurs, aux distributeurs. Donc, je voulais déjà savoir si vous aviez toujours eu des facilités à monter financièrement vos films, à les produire, ou si au contraire, vous avez dû beaucoup lutter. Et enfin, je m'intéressais particulièrement à un de vos films, votre avant-dernier en fait, Moi, Daniel Blake, qui est un film incroyable, incroyablement puissant. Et ce qui le rend puissant, c'est qu'au-delà de la violence du système qu'il dénonce, il véhicule beaucoup d'émotions en termes, enfin, différents sentiments, je veux dire, de la colère, la révolte, la mélancolie, mais aussi quelque part l'humour. Ça en devient presque drôle tellement c'est surréaliste ce qui lui arrive à ce monsieur. Donc voilà, est-ce que le fait de manier, est-ce que c'est volontaire de votre part de manier toutes ces émotions, tous ces sentiments, voilà, pour rendre votre film plus percutant? Voilà mes 2 questions.
Mr. Loach. Yes.
I didn't get the translation.
No, you
yes.
get it, but
D'accord.
unfortunately, I'm not. Oh, do you want me to translate, Nicola, or do you want to translate yourself? I'm not a professional, but I can try to be faithful to your questions. It's just the translators are on the other canal. Well,
okay.
I can
So
try if you want. If it's your, so I'll try. If you're not correct, you correct me.
I can try. It's okay. J'avais noté les phrases en anglais pour le cas où. Pardon.
Oh, okay,
Donc,
great.
so, Mr. Loach, excuse me.
Yeah.
So I explain you. I work for a media for the cinema professionals like producers, distributors. So I would like to ask you if you have always had a lot of facilities to produce your films, your movies, or have you had to struggle a lot for produce your movies, please?
Well, it's varied. To begin with, in television, obviously, if you work for the BBC, you work for the BBC. That's the end of the story. We did films. We began making films in 1966. I did the first one in 1968. We made the second one, which was rather better, called Kes, which did very little business initially. And then we did another film in 1972, which was called Family Life. And that did so badly in the cinemas in Britain that we were told it didn't even pay for the usherettes selling the ice cream. So that was a disaster. We couldn't make another film really for 10 years, more or less, after that. I did one film at the end of did television films in the 70s. We couldn't raise money for cinema films in Britain. We did one film at the end of the 1970s, which did very little business. In the 1980s, I gave up cinema, really. I did television, but we did documentaries. It was during when Thatcher was at the height of her power, and most of the documentaries I made for television were banned. And so it was a very bad time. I did one film which we raised money for in Germany, which my work was very bad on it. It was a good script by a writer called Trevor Griffiths, good actors in it, but my work was not good. And I think I'd lost confidence, you know, the way when a footballer's on the pitch, if he hadn't scored a goal for whole season, you know, he forgets how to kick the ball. And I was a bit like that, really. I didn't do it well. Then at the end of the 80s, I got the chance. I was asked to do a film by a producer called David Putnam, who was head of Columbia, and eventually that became Hidden Agenda, and it went to Cannes, and it was, the British wouldn't show it because it was about the British Army in Ireland, but it did okay in Europe. And then immediately we did another film, a little comedy film, and that went to Cannes, and that did quite well. And from then on, I've been, touch wood. Do you touch wood in France for good luck? Yeah, okay, well, touch wood. Touch wood. We've been lucky, and since the mid-1990s, we've had co-productions in Europe, mainly the French. You know, we've had 2 brilliant distributors in France, and they've been immensely generous to us and supportive. So it's because of the European co-productions that we've managed to work and managed to do one film every 18 months, maybe sometimes even more quickly. So that's been a massive good fortune. So since 1990, we've been okay, based on because we're not expensive. I mean, we're quite cheap, you know. We're not expensive. So even for European films, we're quite cheap. European co-productions based on the money that they think the film will raise, either in television sales or in cinema sales or to other distributors or around the world. So we've managed to keep going. And I say it's mainly thanks to the French, also the Italians, also the Japanese have been very good. The Belgians, we've had some Belgians in the crew, and they bring chocolates, which is good. And they play a lot of Jacques Brel, which is always very entertaining. So we hear Jacques Brel, we eat Belgian chocolate, and they're very good workers on the film.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay,
it's a pleasure.
Okay.
So, can I ask my second question, please?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry. So, Mr. Loach, in your movie Hi, Daniel Blake, you show the violence of the welfare system in England, and you do it by mixing different feelings: anger, melancholy, and humor. So, do all these varieties of emotions allow, in your opinion, to sensitize a large public? Please.
Well, it's just how people are, you know. I mean, it's not calculated in order to please an audience. It's just how people are.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the truth if the people don't smile, you know, and there aren't funny things happen, and people do silly things, and kids are funny, you know, and they do funny things, and football is always very important as well. I mean, that's always a great of great importance to the British working class. You know, most men, well, it used to be most men, often most women now follow a football team. So that's a universal language of that everyone can understand, you know, enjoy.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Really. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. We have a question of Flavien, and yes, we try to permit Flavien to use the mic and the webcam. we try. Maybe. En anglais. In English. No. Yes. Flavien, no. Maybe. Yes. Yes, that's true. No. Just we don't have the mic. Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
That's it.
Take two. Hi everyone, thank you to the festival for being bringing it to everyone. I'm talking to you from Montreal in Canada. So it's an honor to be there with like sharing it. So me, I discovered your cinema when I was like 12 years old with like the movie My Name is Joe. And it was the first time in all my cinema history that I was when I was a kid that I discovered the reality of life, like to have drunk people, like, and question of love and question of taking care of each other in political ways. And it was like the question I have since I'm a kid, like since 20, like I think it was in 1998. So since like 20 years now, I have this question: how did you got the idea of that movie? What was the like the little or the magic hour that gave you the little point of, okay, I want to do it?
Well, it was Paul Laverty, the writer. I mean, Paul, the extraordinary, and we never talk about the writers enough, but Paul, the extraordinary man. He was a lawyer, and he went to Nicaragua as a human rights lawyer to observe what was happening there, the destruction of the schools, the destruction of the health centers. And then when he came back, he wrote to me, and we met, and we decided to do that film together. But Paul is from Scotland. He's from a particular area of Scotland. And we said, let's do one from your home country, your home territory. So we talked about it, and Paul went back to live in a particular area of Glasgow, a particular area of Glasgow, where we knew there were big problems. And he suddenly rang over, he was in touch, he said, I've got a character I think we should make a film around. And it was Joe, who was an alcoholic, but he was not drinking. And so we talked, and then he wrote down a sequence of events. And we talked some more, and we do what we always do, which was knock the idea backwards and forwards, but Paul writes the characters and the dialogue and the story. And then it was a question of bringing it to life. And the next big question, you be really, as I said earlier, be really tough with each other about the script and about the storyline and about the interaction of the characters and so on. And then finding people who you will believe. And we were very lucky. I'd worked with Peter Mullen, who played Joe. I'd worked with him in Riff Raff, a film you mentioned earlier. We'd done one small scene, he'd been in one scene, and I thought he's really good. So we tried it, and he was fine. And but it was Paul's writing, Peter's performance, and Louise, who played Sarah, the woman that he loves, actually, and who he loses because of what he's asked to do. So it was, that's how it came about. And it's a film about, again, about choices that people have, and the desperate effects of alcohol, which is a theme, and it's in Glasgow had a reputation for that, maybe unfairly, but it was a lovely film to do, and very.
But thank you very much for that movie, because for me, I'm working with kids since I'm like 14 years old, and like that gave me the strength to believe in believing in others. So it was going in neighborhoods where it was not easy to help kids. So I became a clown when I was 14 make them laugh and everything, and give me all the strength for it. And then when I was 20, my trip was to go to Glasgow. So I wanted to discover like the neighborhood of the movie, and I went through the through the process of the whole thing. And I know you're still working with Paul Laverty. Like I think he made like I Daniel Blake too. He's still very exciting. So yes, it's very. Thank you for letting me know finally after all those years, like what was the whole process of it. And thank you to the festival. Thank you.
Good. It's a pleasure. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you too.
Thank you.
Maybe if you are, if you agree, Mr. Loach, we have a really big number of questions. It's complicated for us to choose it. And if you are okay, we can take a question again.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. Yes. And it's Pierre Legal. And that's it for.
Hello, Mr. Loach.
Hi. Hello.
Thank you so much to be in my home tonight. Your cinema is a huge source of inspiration for me, so thank you for that.
Merci beaucoup.
My question is, love or family stories in your movies often take the form of political fights, of daily battles. Do you think today that loving or starting a family are political acts? And what are the first questions you ask yourself when you imagine with Paul Laverty a love or a family story for your main character? Thank you.
I don't think starting a family is a political act. I mean, I don't know about you, but most people, when they're are thinking of something else when they start a child. So I think it's probably not politics that's in their mind, really. I think it's probably something else. But inevitably, I mean, some people just feel the world is too harsh to bring a child in, but I can understand that. But I think most people, the instinct to have children is just too strong, and that's how it is, you know, and probably it's a good thing. Sorry, what was the next bit?
Yeah, the second question is, when you imagine your next movie with Paul, what are the first question you think about your main character? Is the daily work, or his family, or his love?
I think it's a situation. I mean, we talk most days, but we exchange messages, texts, because Paul lives in Scotland. I live down in the west of England, I mean, we exchange texts every day and emails and stories from the papers, and we speak every second day, and just ideas, you know, come up in conversation. And so, you know, say, did you see this story? Or did you see that story? There was an interesting situation, and there's one situation that may recur, and then you end up working on it and say, let's see if we can find something, find the central situation that will enable us to show the whole story. Because if you get it right, the characters you choose, you can just tell their story, but it says everything you want to say. You don't have to make a speech about it. This is what you must understand. Tell their story, and it reveals everything you want to say. You know, if you get it right. Sometimes we get it wrong. You know, some films we've done and that doesn't work. But if you're lucky, if you get the right story, you simply tell the story of those few people over that maybe short period, and it shows you everything you need to say. So that's how they come about. But I mean, I don't know if we shall get another one made. I don't know, really. I mean, a year out, a year not working, you know, when you reach a certain age is quite difficult, you know. I mean, we've been saying that it's a bit like if you have an old car in the garage and you finally push it out onto the road, you're not certain if the engine will start again. And I think that's how we feel about doing another film, really. Not certain if the engine will start again, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Okay, time for one more then, and then we'll, if it's too late now, maybe.
One question. Okay. Thank you. Maybe Alexandre Oswald. We try for the mic and the webcam. Let it work. Yes.
Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening, Mr. Loach. Thank you a lot for your time. It's a real honor to be able to ask you a question tonight. I wanted to have your opinion on something that always so often comes in my head, is that don't you think when the initiative to create a film is activism, so when a film is really about activism, being activism, it becomes more information, communication than art?
I think that's a very good question. I think that's what I tried to say earlier, that it's if it simply comes out of a need to make a political point, it will be propaganda. And as you say, I mean, but once we start making the film, we forget about the politics of it. It's simply about the truth of the people and the truth of the situation and the humanity of the people involved and how they interact, and the truth of family relationships, parents, children, partners, you know, young people in love, old people trying to survive or whatever. It's simply about the reality, the truth of those people. Otherwise it's shallow, you know, otherwise it has no resonance, you know. It's like a bell that doesn't ring, really. It's not worth much. I think I mean, yes, I mean, a film can be a polemic. I mean, that's okay. You can make a documentary and, you know, make a really sharp polemic with a point of view that is for only about activism. But that's the difference, I think, between a novel and a pamphlet, you know, and both are okay. It's okay to write a political pamphlet, just as it's okay to make a polemic film. But that's not a novel, you know. They're different, and we've tried to, I guess, make the equivalent of the novel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you a lot.
Yeah, okay. I mean, one thing we haven't talked about, inevitably, I suppose, is that the process of making a film is in itself has political implications, and that the way a crew works and the way people are treated and the way you try to hope you inspire trust and the way people are spoken to and is absolutely central, because you can't make a film with the values that we hope we want to make it with if you make a film in the conventional way, which is hierarchy, which is a kind of arrogance, really, in filmmaking. And I think you have to approach filmmaking in a very different way to the way the industry works, or this is what we found. But maybe another year we'll talk about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Loach.
And we hope, yes, to can welcome you in Carcassonne, and thank you, everyone. It was really fascinating for us, and I hope for everyone. And I have to thank to everyone who asked question, and sorry for body who or people who don't have the chance to ask you, but you are really much, and thank you again, and we wish you the best. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yaël, too.
Thank you. And we missed the applaud, but I don't know how to do it.
Yes.
I think.
Okay, and just say thank you to you two, and lots of luck for the festival. And thanks, Yaël, and everyone else, and the sorry, it's Etienne and my other friend there, and thanks a lot, and maybe see you in Carcassonne one day, and let's hope
we hope so. Thank you.
We hope so.
Okay. And remember,
have a nice evening.
We have to end with a fist in the air.
Thanks.
Okay. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Yes.
À bientôt.
À bientôt.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye bye.